All right, Scott and I are going to talk about strength and flexibility tonight. So I'm going to take the strength, and Scott will finish up with how to stretch and be flexible. All right, so we're going to go over a little bit of strengths and theories, the different muscle groups and how we can train. And then also we're going to hit the core, which is the most fun. Then we're going to go into flexibility and talk about the dynamic stretching that you do before your training, and then some of the static stretching you do afterwards. And then kind of the benefits and some of the science that we've discovered going through this. All right, so first let's look at strength training and how to become Arnolds. Of course, that's probably not what you're going for. But if you are, strength training is the way to go. A lot of people think that strength training is not really beneficial for triathlons, but it really is. There's a lot of benefits, and we will be going through them. The idea is not to get big and just huge like Arnold is. That's very inefficient. There's no sense carrying an extra 100 pounds of muscle with you and lose aerodynamics and everything else. Also, a lot of people don't feel they have time to lift because they're already running, swimming, biking, and the rest of life. But you can work out and find time for it, and it's well worth it. So let's talk a little bit about benefits. There's no reason to weight train 10-15 hours a week like you would if you're trying to be a lifter in the gym. A very small amount is going to give you a huge benefit. It's a lot like speed work. If you only put 5 to 10% of your total time in, you're going to see a huge improvement. And it doesn't really add a ton of extra time to your week. If you cut off one short, easy fluff run or fluff bike, you can add that in for working out and get 5-10 times the benefit of that small aerobic workout. So we're not trying to build size like Arnold is. We're trying to get functional power. So we're trying to get stronger in the run, bike, and swim areas, not just put muscle mass on to look better or to be able to lift bigger weights. There's a lot of benefits for lifting. When you're doing aerobics, you don't stress the body in the same ways that weightlifting and to the same extent speed workout does. So when you stress your body and actually start to have micro tears in your body and put that extra anaerobic stress on it, your body tries to help heal itself and make yourself stronger. So it's going to release a lot of hormones that help repair your bones, your tendons, your muscles, and really help you heal from not only that weight training, but all your other endurance activities that you do in between your weight training. So these increases in HGH and some of the other hormones are going to be with you days after the weightlifting and are going to help you recover and get stronger for your endurance events. Another thing is, most of the time when you're doing endurance events, you're really not using very much of your muscles. A lot of studies have shown that you're only using around 20% in your normal endurance for like half Ironman iron distance. So when you do weight training, you're firing at full power and using all your muscles, and that's helping engage your brain to your muscles and kind of make those pathways more used, so when you're actually doing the endurance events, your body is more connected with your muscles. You also become more efficient. So by using that maximum power, you're building stability on your joints, especially your hips, your shoulders. So you're doing the endurance events and doing those same motions, you're going to be more stable, and more of the power that you're exerting is actually going to go toward moving forward faster. And then we've already talked about strengthening tissues so that the endurance, when you're actually training the 90% of the time, that your muscles are stronger, your tendons are stronger, so the chance of injuring yourself does become less. Now you do have to be careful. If you train too hard lifting, you can have injuries yourself and cause problems, so you have to kind of balance the two. Alright, so here's a slide which we stole from one of Scott's previous presentations, where it just talks about stressing your muscles, and your muscles grow and become bigger and stronger. As you can see in the pictures, you have one that doesn't have a ton of muscle fibers that you can see in the cross section, and you see the other one where you see a lot more muscle fibers in there. Now with weight training and endurance and everything else, your muscles are going to get bigger, but how we're focusing on is more getting stronger and not so much getting larger. So if you're spending most of your time doing endurance events, your muscles are not going to get just huge and bulky. You're going to have that balance where they're going to get bigger and stronger, but they're not going to add a lot of mass on, which is going to slow you down. And of course, one of the main things is you have to recover after working out. Just like endurance, weightlifting puts a lot of stress on your muscles, and there is some micro tearing and damage which your body needs to repair. So you are going to have to do more rest and make sure you're getting a higher percentage of protein and carbs so that your body has the building blocks to repair itself and get stronger. One thing with weightlifting, I like to do that around my rest days so that I can lift weights and then I have that day afterwards to really let my body recover so I don't negatively impact any of my training. So if you do a hard lift day and then you try to go out and do speed work the next day, it's going to be a lot harder. But if you can get like a rest day or a no legs day right after your training, that helps your body recover and doesn't negatively affect your other training sessions. All right, so we won't go too much into the relaxing, contracting of how your muscles work, but primarily we want to talk about the muscle movement. So muscles come in two pairs. You have one that works one way, the other one that pulls the other. So your bicep, tricep is a really simple example. And in triathlons, a lot of people aren't balanced in those opposing muscle groups. A lot of times when you're swimming, you're only pulling. You really don't fire the muscles in the other way. And when you get unbalanced on the joint, you're going to put extra stress on that joint and have ability to kind of change your posture and can cause injuries and put stress on different tendons and things like swimming injuries that a lot of people have. So being able to weight train both the muscles that make you faster when you're trying to race and the muscles that help stabilize and are the opposite muscles of those will help you feel better, will make you stronger and less prone to injuries. All right, so I'm going to look at 3 different ways to lift weights. A lot of people can look at them in a lot of different areas, but I've kind of split it out to 3 ways, and then we'll kind of talk about a few different lifts and a few different training plans to focus on these different ways. So the first one is isolated weights. So this is what a lot of people think of when they go to the gym and you see people either doing free weights or machines where you're doing a very simple lift. For example, this is preacher curls where the isolation is just in the bicep. It tries to limit every other muscle that you use. Other things like a bench press or shrugs where you're focusing on 1 or 2 muscle groups. These lifts are very safe, they're very easy to do as long as you check your form and make sure you have good posture. Most people can do these and do them safely with no issues or problems. And they're very easy to start from square one and do them without having to learn a lot or build some strength to be able to do them safely. These don't give you the most benefit, so since you're only training one muscle group at a time and you're going to want to train a lot of muscle groups in the 20 or 30 minutes that you're going to be at the gym, you're going to have to do quite a few different lifts. So if you want to do upper body, you do your shoulders, your chest, your biceps, your triceps, your deltoids, all kinds of things. Pretty soon you have 5, 10 or so lifts to really get a good upper body lift. So a lot of times you're going to try to use combination lifts or functional exercises which are going to target a number of muscle groups at the same time. Now these are a little more challenging because a lot of these require balance. They require a lot of secondary muscles to be engaged for your body to correctly stabilize and be able to do the lift correctly. So some of these lifts are squats, lunges, different like squats with an overhead press. They're using multiple joints and they're much more functional of what you're doing in a triathlon. So when you're swimming, most people aren't doing curls, they're doing some sort of action. So if you can simulate that action where, for example, running, you use your hips, you're stabilizing your hips in every push-off. When you're biking, one leg's pushing down, the other one's coming up, and keeping your hips stable is really important to get full power. So there's a lot of different exercises, especially the one-legged exercises, which are going to force you to spend a lot of work stabilizing that joint and getting stronger there. So that's what these functional exercises focus on. So you got strength, stability, posture, all these things that are going to help you while you're racing by doing these. There is a few problems with these because if you're not very careful with form, it's easy to stress different areas, back, knees, hips, and cause problems and injuries. So this is one of these things that you really want to make sure you're doing it right. Most gyms have mirrors where you can actually look and see your form. It's really helpful to work with a personal trainer or a friend that knows how to do these lifts. And you also want to start out with very light weights. In a lot of cases, you're basically going to do the lift with no weights for the first week or so to figure out how I'm going to do it, how to have the right form, and to build up the core muscles for you to actually be able to do the lift successfully and in the right form. But again, these lifts are going to give you a much more bang for your buck. So if you do 2-3 functional lifts, you're going to cover the muscle groups that you do in 6, 7, 8 isolated work. Normally I will do a mix, so I'll do some of these and then I'll know there's some muscle group that I want to focus on based on an injury or weakness or something that I feel is kind of slowing me up, and then I will pull in some of the isolated exercises to make sure I'm really targeting the areas I want to train. Alright, and then we have plyometrics. This is a little more advanced workout. There's also much more chance for injury here. This is where you're doing a very explosive power, where you're basically preloading a muscle and then just accelerating out at full force. This gives you a huge benefit because the other work, lifts, were done in a very slow motion, which is not the same speed that you're actually doing during racing. Racing is a very fast, your muscles are contracting and firing and going very quickly. So this here is doing the same power, but it's doing it at a very fast contraction, which is very beneficial to you, but at the same point, it also loads a ton of stress in your body. So this is a type of lifting that you have to start very slow. So it's not something you can go out and do 5 sets of 15 one day and expect not to be really hurting the next day or pull something. There's also a lot of injuries around tendons and muscles that you can get pulled or tore. For example, Kobe Bryant just tore his Achilles. Basically, he was doing this, taking off, putting a ton of pressure on his leg and accelerating, and it just popped. So there is the possibility of this happening in this type of work. So that's why you want to build this very slow, but there's huge benefits. Most people that are trying to get faster in the run and the bike are going to pull this in. The really pro athletes, this can really, really help. So if you want to get faster, this is a great way of doing it, but you have to start out really early and build extremely slow. Also, if you're having any nagging injuries, you want to kind of hold off of this because this does put a lot of stress on. Most of these, for example, the jumps are going to work primarily your lower body with your core and stability. Here's an upper body lift, which is basically a push-off, where you push off and clap your hands. If you ever tried it, very hard acceleration, much harder than having to do just a regular push-up or some sort of bench press. And again, lifting weights for all 3 of them, you are going to do some sort of warm-up to basically get your muscles warm and flexible, along with some light, easy workouts beforehand. But you really shouldn't combine these with your aerobic training. So you don't want to go out and do a 2-hour bike and get out and start just hammering the jumps, because what's happening is you've stressed your muscles, you've used up a lot of the nutrients they've had, you fatigue them, and suddenly putting this massive stress on is a good way of getting injured. Plus, as your muscles get tired, you're going to lose some of your stability, so your form's going to be much harder to maintain, and it's much easier to do them wrong, and the injury risk is much higher. So if you're going to do weight training and you're going to train more than 30 minutes or so, some sort of aerobic, you really want to do them like beginning and end of day separate, or try to do them right around a rest day is what I love doing. But you really don't want to put back-to-back aerobic and weight training, any of the 3 types. Early season where you're doing really short workouts, you can, but by the time you start working out hard, you definitely want to try to put them as far apart as possible. All right, so let's narrow down a little bit for the swim, bike, and run. we have circled the areas that muscle groups are used during the swim. So you have your primary emphasis up on your chest, arms, with your bicep, triceps, forearms with the pole, keeping your hand. A lot of core, and then once you get down to kicking, you have a little less emphasis on the legs. I haven't pulled in a lot of the leg exercises since we're going to hit those in the bike and run. But there's a lot of stuff you can do to get stronger and also stabilize. So with you stretching up, you really want to have strength to stabilize your shoulders and back into your back, along your neck and backbone. So some of the really good ones are incline press or military press, where you're really building that strength up above you where you're starting your pull. Lat pull downs, where you're really building up your lats to have the strength in the pull, the main part here. Rows are great to build strength in your shoulder blades. Save with some of the different raises where you're actually going against where you normally pull to build that balance in your muscles. Otherwise, you're going to get overdeveloped in some of the areas and undeveloped in the areas that you need for stabilization to protect your joints. All right, so let's look at your leg muscles on the bike. So this is a chart that kind of goes through your whole pedal stroke, so 360 degrees, and kind of shows the major emphasis of the different muscle groups. You see right away that the main power stroke from the 12 to 3 is made up with a lot of glutes and quads. Once you get down to the 6 o'clock, you're going to start pulling your calf in as you start to pull your pedal around and come up. And then as you come up, you're going to pull some of your secondary muscles in, like your hamstrings and a little bit of your calf again, which isn't shown here, by keeping your foot straight. So you basically see that you're using most of your muscles in your legs. Your primary emphasis are on your glutes and your quads, but you're pulling everything together. And if you're, as we talked about last month, you want to pull up and use those small muscles as much as possible. So as we start lifting, we want to really focus on the big muscle groups, because that's where you can get most of your power. And then the smaller muscle groups are primarily going to be stabilizing those big lifts, and they will also get the intensity of the workout. All right, and run groups. So running, you use the same muscles, but there's a few places where you use them differently in how you're running versus biking. So your quads are pushing down. So when you're biking, your quads, you push down on the pedals. When you're running, you're really not pushing down, you're actually lifting up. So that's a main difference. Also, when you're pushing off, with your calf muscles, you're pushing very hard on the run, but you're more stabilizing on the bike and keeping it more in control and not moving. So that's a bit of a change. Also, with your hips and glutes, you tend to use them very heavily on the bike, where a lot of power comes in the aero position. In the run, it's more of a stabilization. You're not getting as much power from there as you would think. And the hamstrings, again, you're using both. So let's look at a couple of lifts. I threw some isolation exercises, some functional, and then plyometrics. And these are just a small part of what you'd want. There's a lot of different ones. I just threw some of my favorite ones, but I tend to change as the time goes on. I always are reading lifting magazines and seeing what the newest stuff is, and I tend to incorporate new ones every now and then just to change up. And that is beneficial to change what you're lifting. You're trying to stress your body to cause your body to adapt. And if you just do the same thing 360 days out of the year, your body's going to get used to it and really not change and get stronger. So you do want to switch up what you're doing and try to change it to re-stress your body to force that adaptation to keep happening. So isolation exercises like leg presses, leg extensions for your hamstrings, hamstring curls, the leg extensions are more your quads, calf raises. All of those you can basically do by doing squats. You hit the same emphasis. If you squat with a dumbbell press, you then pull in your upper body with the squatting. You can't use quite as heavy of weight, so you can't stress your lower legs quite as much, but you still get a full body. We have rows, push-up, pull-downs. When you're biking, you do need that stability of your body when you're generating power from the aero position. Your will generates stress all the way from your body into your core into your legs, so you do need some upper body workouts.
adductor and abductor?
Oh yes, those are actually very big. So in running, biking, and swimming, we are primarily front and back movement. We really have no side-to-side strengthening that takes place, such as skiing or skating, ice skating, that type of thing. So it's a really good idea to strengthen that area as much as possible. So there's a number of different band workouts, there's leg raises laying on the ground, there's clamshells, so there's a lot of non-lifting exercises to hit the abductors and the abductors, which basically just holds your legs in or out. You do find that with biking that your primary emphasis is on the quad, but you still have the inside muscle that has to keep your knee tracking so it doesn't pull out with your big quad firing. So it's very important to work on those secondary smaller muscles to have more stability in your joints and be able to use your bigger muscles effectively. All right, and then let's see what else. We also have deadlifts. So the deadlifts and the squats are the two biggest lifts that weightlifters do. They are the ones that give you the biggest bang for the buck. They stretch your body a lot, so you have to be very careful using them. When I used to weightlift before I started getting into endurance, you would have one day where you did lower body, where you did squats, deadlifts, and probably either lunges or some sort of calf raises, and you'd probably not be able to walk for 2 or 3 days. Now, that's the amount of tearing that's done, but that's where you get the huge benefit, the huge strength increase. For triathlons, we can't really do a lift and then not train for 3 to 4 days in that muscle group. So you have to be really careful with how much you lift and really start slow so that you can walk upstairs and do all those things for a couple days afterwards. But they are the lifts that will give you the biggest improvement and stress your body the most. So if you're going to do really hard lifts, you really want to do them during the off season when you're not working on the endurance level and really trying to get the long, hard workouts. So that's a great time to build that base strength that you can then incorporate into being faster during race season. But you do want to be careful and make sure you start with very low weights, get very good form. Also, those are the ones that have the best chance of actually giving you an injury. So I've lifted with friends that actually basically tore their whole lower back doing bad form and basically just collapsed with the amount of weight they're trying to do. So it is important to be very safe when you're lifting, especially if you're lifting heavy weights, to have a spotter and different things like that. But they will make you a lot stronger and allow you to be a lot faster athlete. And then plyometrics, different boundings, box jumping, squat jumps, very much where you're using the kind of form and functionality that you're going to use while you're biking and running and really gain that power. Those are used by a lot of sprinters to get very powerful burst and explosion off the bike and off the run. But most of the studies have also shown that not only does it give you that quick, fast 5-10 second speed, but it really improves the overall endurance and allows you to push harder and be more efficient. In some cases, they're talking about 10-12% increase in efficiency, which over a half Ironman time really makes a huge difference. All right, and then we get to the core, which is everybody's favorite. Core is incredibly important. Everything you do is really based off your core. So if you have a strong core, you can keep a strong and stable hip platform, you're going to be much stronger on the bike, you're going to be more efficient and faster on the run, and it's also going to help your swim where you generate a lot of power from your core. So I've thrown a bunch of standard core workouts. You can find your favorite. One of the things to make sure is you're doing core workouts that are actually functionally going to help you on the swim, bike, and run. So some of the crunches and different areas that you're just doing that really aren't making you stronger while you're straight up and down for your running or swimming really don't give you a huge benefit. So you really want to have that power for the twisting, the power where you're flat. So an idea of like a planks or flutter kicks is really giving you strength for the run, for the swim, that a lot of times just doing crunches and some of the standard core workouts that you find in magazines or online really don't make you faster in triathlons. It might give you a nice six-pack, but that's about all they do. So you really want to pick the functional ones that are going to help with the event you're doing. One thing I really like is trying to pick up and use more advanced core workouts. Again, try to fire as much muscles as possible. So you can do a standard plank, or you can do a standard plank with a stability ball, or you can start doing the circles with the stability ball, and quite quickly you'll find that just the different amount of muscles that are engaged and fired to keep you stable. And every time you can fire those stability muscles is training those muscles to work when you're running, swimming, biking, and really helping you become more efficient and more connected with your body, so you're going to be able to race faster. It also helps with balance and just everything else. All right, so I have a few handouts with just some basic workouts that Scott and I put together. Scott's been kind of a guinea pig. He's worked out a few of them.
I can still walk.
Yes. We haven't had any major injuries or anything. So for a basic workouts, these are primarily isolation exercises with a few combination moves. We basically put together 3 different sessions, so you could work out 3 times a week. 2 of the sessions are going to use some of the gym workouts where you're going to need a bench and some of their props. The 3rd workout was kind of made a little easier, so you could do that at home whenever you had a few minutes. And this is just a nice start of starting to work out and trying to follow some of these. You can kind of pick and choose. If you have some different options, like if you can't, starting out, if you can't do a chin-up, then of course you can do a pull-down and cut the weight down until you get strong enough. There's just a lot of ways that you can tweak the workouts to kind of match the areas that you want to focus on. And again, it's kind of split out of trying to do a little bit of arms, a little bit of legs, a little bit of core for each workout. And that's another thing different for triathlons versus your normal workout. So most gym rats are going to go in and they're going to hit one muscle group, but they're going to hit it 20 different ways. In triathlons, we really don't have the time, and we don't want to damage ourselves that much where it takes 48 hours to heal and be able to use those muscles again. You really want to come in, hit a bunch of muscle groups, and then get on with your life. So we're basically pulling in a few different muscle training exercises for each large muscle group, and then we'll hit with a little different twist on it a couple days later just to make sure we're hitting all the different areas. All right, here's a functional workout with some of the larger lifts. I split this up to twice a day. The first one is going to work on a lot of joint stability and not be as quite hardcore. And then the second one is going to be very much a power building where you're going to try to get a lot stronger, but you're only going to do a couple lifts so you don't do a lot of tearing and can still train a day or two later. So there's a different stability for full body, a couple core thrown in.
So, Mike, just you would do this for the big standard work.
Right. Yep. So would do both. So basically, I added 3 different levels. The first level is kind of a beginner. Anyone should be able to go in and start doing this one. This one here has a lot more advanced work. So you're really going to want to be lifting for a while to build that core functionality, the core how to lift principles before you actually get in and start doing this. For example, a Turkish get-up is a little hard to do from scratch. You need a lot of stability in your shoulder muscles and core strength to be able to do that. So being able to build that in some of the simpler exercises, same with squats or squats with a press, where you're actually squatting, coming down and pressing, the balance and kind of ability to do that is something that's going to take a lot of time. So this is a much more advanced workout that you wouldn't want to start out right away until you know what you're doing. And then even a more advanced workout is plyometrics. Here, this one, you would not start all at once. If you're going to do this workout, you pick one and do maybe 5 jumps, and then a couple days later you'd see how you're doing and maybe add a 6th jump in. So it's one of those things that you would probably not get doing this whole workout for a couple months as you slowly build up and make sure your body can handle it and not cause any injury. Because the main thing is you want to get stronger over time. It's not get really strong, get hurt, lose half that, then try to get strong again, get hurt. The idea is to slowly progress and stay away from injuries. So I got a lot of different legs ones in here. If you could do all of this, you could get really fast. But it's definitely something that would take a long time, and again, you probably want to start this out more off-season, really early race season. If you're actually into race season, getting ready for a race, this is something that you would not do until after your day race is done. And again, here you're probably only going to do 1, maybe 2 sessions a week, simply because it's an added stress to your body that you need a lot of time to recover and make sure you're not overtraining in this scenario. All right, so that comes up with all the weightlifting and strength, so I'll give it over to Scott.
Any questions?
Or did we want to do questions? No?
You could, yeah.
All right. Do we have any questions over the strength training?
Free weights or machines?
I would highly recommend free weights. Free weights give you more stability and allow you to track more normally. So a lot of machines, they isolate further than a free weight. So if you're doing a bench press and free weights, you are using all kinds of stabilization muscles to keep that bar from moving. You can see if you've got muscle imbalances where one muscle is much stronger, where you have to strengthen that one. In a machine, you're locked in, and you're just going exactly where it is. And if it doesn't fit your body type, you're actually putting stress on muscles that can cause injury. So definitely, if you can free weights, there's some lifts that free weights are almost impossible to do that you do use machine, but free weights are definitely the way to go. Any other questions?
What is the diagram of the red line?
Oh, this is my part.
That, yeah, that's here lets you know.
I'll do it. Okay, yeah, all right. So yeah, so the second part, well, we can ask more questions to at the end. So the second part was going to be talking about kind of stretching and flexibility. And a lot of the reasons that people claim, or probably if you look at the most common reason people claim that they stretch, it's to avoid injuries, right? So they don't want to get tight or go out and run on tight muscles. It turns out, if you look at the literature, to avoid injuries, the stretches that most people do are probably last on the list of things that are going to protect you from injuries. So the best thing to do is actually start with good form. So you don't want to look like her, when you're running at least. Unless you're a world-class sprinter, you might want to look like her. But actually, really, a good runner is going to look more like the person on the left here, right? So that, I just threw this in as hyperpolarization of good form versus bad. Actually, she probably has good form for a sprinter, not good form for the rest of us. Right? So really, this whole idea of the body lean, we've talked about this before, but with running, you really want to have, again, your core, nice strong core muscles, holding yourself nice and straight, and you're bending forward at the ankle and letting gravity push you forward, right? Instead of these really high knees, high extension. When her foot hits the ground here, she's going to basically be sending a lot of shocks right up her leg, and she's going to get shin splints and knee injuries and everything like that. So again, the sprinters might be able to get by with it, and they peak at like 30 and never run again. For the rest of us, for endurance athletes, I would start with that. And then it turns out the next best thing, or what we'll talk about here, are dynamic warm-ups. And then, as Mike mentioned, strength training, so that you have your muscles strong enough so that if you do start doing this to them, it just looks painful. Your knees can absorb that. You're going to strengthen the muscles around the joints. And then the last thing will actually be the static stretches, which is what most people think of when they think about strengthening and increasing flexibility. So we're going to talk about this dynamic stretching. And this, in fact, I teach a triathlon class, and we went over this in class, and I said, I described it. I said, so how many of you have heard of dynamic stretching before? And everybody in the class raised their hand. So if you're like under 20, this is how you've been trained in high school sports now. If you're my age, I never heard of this till I started seeing my students doing it. We learned basically the static stretching, right? This is what we did before cross-country meets or anything like that. You sat down and did the hurdler stretch, and then you did the other leg for, held it till you couldn't feel your leg anymore or something. It turns out this actually actually hurts your performance to some degree, and actually for a couple hours afterwards. So these dynamic warm-ups are more what we do now. And as the name implies, you're going through these stretches, but you're not holding them for any amount of time. All right. And the idea behind this, it's kind of a warm-up, get your body warmed up, increase your range of motion, loosen up the muscles. But there is some evidence that this helps to prevent injuries. It also improves your balance. And it turns out that, as Mike was saying, with a lot of the different types of lifts you can do now sitting on the stability ball, just improving your balance strengthens lots of smaller muscles that help, especially around your joints. Right? So they help those lateral motions. If everything's going like this when you're running and biking, you're fine. It's those little tweaks and twists that go right from your ankles up through your knees to your hips that kind of end up causing the joint problems. This static stretching is probably good in a couple of sports, such as gymnastics, dance, things like that. But for most other athletes, and I'll show you a couple of graphs on this in just a moment, it can actually decrease your strength and performance for about 1 to 2 hours after you do this. And it turns out it's not quite as simple as that. I'll show you on these graphs. But it also doesn't really necessarily help you prevent injuries. It may help you recover from the injuries. It does increase your range of motion, but what they've found is actually the people who get the people who get the fewest injuries are the ones who have kind of intermediate amount of flexibility. The ones who get the most injuries are the most flexible and the least flexible. Right? So if you're very stiff, you're more likely to get injured. If you're really, really flexible, you're actually more likely to get injured than if you're a little bit stiff. Right? So really, we don't need to be able to do this and do triathlons, right? I mean, she needs to because she's going to go do ballet or something. Hopefully those are ballet. Right. But there is a little bit of flexibility, I think, that will come in handy for a triathlete. One of these is being able to get into an arrow position. Right? If you try to crank yourself down into an arrow position, you're going to probably have back or hamstring problems. If you get down too low, you know what I'm talking about here. If you get down, like really down like this, and I'm trying to bike, right, that can cause some problems. So there you might want some flexibility. I think also on the run, the more relaxed you are, the more balance you have. Again, that's going to go into flexibility. You're going to hurt less. I think the main reason people do, the reason I do static stretching is it just feels good. You get down at the end of the day, you worked out earlier on, and you go down and touch your toes and you feel your legs, stretching and everything. It just kind of feels good afterwards, right? But it's probably not as beneficial as people think. So if you had a half an hour or an hour a week that you're going to spend stretching, you might be better off spending half of it before workouts doing some dynamic stretching and the other half doing some strength training than you would be sitting there just doing static stretching. So these are the articles. You ever heard of a meta-analysis? That's where they sit down and look at a whole bunch of different studies and then they try to consolidate it into one graph, and that's what this is. So this is a meta-analysis. They actually looked at about 400 studies about acute static stretching. So acute means real short term, but just static stretching, not the dynamic stuff. And they narrowed it down to 106 that all met certain criteria that they use. This was just published last year by a group in Australia. And what they found was that if we look, keep this from moving, this would be where they found significant findings. So here they're comparing different studies. And here on the x-axis they're looking at how long they had the subjects hold this stretch. So this was less than 30 seconds, 30 to 45, 60 to 120, and over 120 seconds. So how long they held a static stretch. And then they went and measured some level of performance afterwards. Sometimes it was sprinting, lifting weights, jumping, right? Whatever measure they used. But what they found was if you can keep the static stretching is fine as long as you keep it short, right? And the magic number seems to be around 30 to 45 seconds. So if you go and hold the stretch, if you're going to go down and hold it like this, count to 10, come back up, you're probably going to be all right in terms of you didn't really put enough stretching on your leg muscle there that you're going to see an effect long term. If you go down and hold it for a minute, you'll actually see a decrease in performance that can last a couple of hours in that muscle. All right, the idea here, again, is these muscles are contracting and expanding. When they contract is when they're strong, right? That's the compression. When you're stretching, you're literally stretching those muscles out, and it takes them a while to get to where they can fully contract again, right? So you're losing some of that power. You're losing some of their elasticity, right? Think of an elastic band, and you stretch it out for a long time, right? It doesn't go back as tight as it did before. When you want muscles to contract, you want them to go back tight, right? So there's such a thing as too much of this static stretching. Does that make sense, right? So the take-home message was static stretching is not evil, it's not, all right, but don't hold it too long, right? In 30 seconds, 30, 45 seconds, you're probably fine. And again, that's really the dynamic workouts, warm-ups we're going to see, basically are the same stretches you do in a static stretch, you just don't hold them for any amount of time. Right? So the flip side is dynamic stretching good for you, right? So we saw static stretching, long-term is bad for you, short, if you just hold it for a short time, it's not bad for you. Okay, so here there are fewer studies on the dynamic stretching. This is a different meta-analysis from 2011. Again, they saw kind of the same thing with the static stretching when they compared different studies. Again, if you hold it for less than 30 seconds, it's fine. If you hold it longer than that, most of them showed some kind of harmful effects. With the dynamic stretching, what was interesting is it flipped around. Here you saw a benefit. You actually saw an increase in performance if you did the dynamic warm-ups or dynamic stretching, but you had to do it for at least 60 seconds. Right? If you only did it for a few seconds, you didn't get much benefit. So here the take-home message was dynamic is good, but only if you do it right. Right? And so what we mean by this dynamic stretching by doing, and I won't do it for 60 seconds, but would be you do some type of thing, you know, like your lunges or something like this, right? But you're not going to just do 2 lunges, okay, I'm warmed up, right? You're actually going to do that for about 60 seconds, all right? So about a minute. So you might pick 4 or 5 of these dynamic warm-ups you're going to do, and you'll do each of them for a little while. When I do this on the, I teach at UWL, I'll go to the indoor track and I'll just do a lap of dynamic warm-ups, right? I'll come up with something. I'll do lunges for a while, and I'll do like little kick things for a while, and twists, whatever. But you just go around the track. And by the time you get around the track, it's 5 or 6 minutes. You've done everything for at least 60 seconds, and you're good, right? Now you might think, okay, well, this is 5 minutes. I'm not running. You know, I'm taking time away from my workout. It turns out it's actually you're going to get more benefit from, kind of like Mike was saying, you're going to get more benefit from that 5 minutes of dynamic warm-up than you will from 5 minutes of running or biking or swimming. Right? You're actually going to get more out of this than you will out of the workout. Not the whole workout, but the equivalent amount of time from the workout. So if you're really stressed for time and you've got an hour to run, spend an hour doing this and run 55 minutes, right? And just count it as part of your running time. Right? If that makes sense. So start the watch if you really anal about things like that. Start the watch and do your workout, do your warm-ups, and then start doing your run, right? So if that matters to you. All right, so this will be the take-home. This will be what's on the test. Right? So again, dynamic's not bad if you do it for a short time. I'm sorry, static's not bad if you do it for a short time. Dynamic's really only good if you do it for a longer time.
If you do it for less than 60 seconds, that looks
no, it's just you don't. These are so this would be 0, and the error bars tell you it's statistically not significant difference. Now this one only had 7 studies in it, so again it's smaller. But each of these is a study where they looked at multiple people, right, with multiple outputs. So the idea with the meta-analysis, and I get people all the time saying, "Oh, I just saw a study that said blah blah blah." And it's like it's true. There is a study that said blah blah blah, but you know there'll be another one that said yada yada yada, right? So these meta-analyses are a way to basically go through and look at all those studies, right, and try to make some sense out of them. So you could sit and try to read all the studies yourself and make sense out of it, and you'll see them all the time in active.com and all these guys. They keep coming up with another study, and you read that and you go, oh, this other one said this, and you know you start getting confused and you know unsubscribe from the site. But really, so what these meta-analyses do is they just kind of break it all down for you. That's why this is usually when we're doing research is what we would go and do. We try to find something like this so you don't have to sit and read the 106 articles yourself. Yeah, if that makes sense. You can probably find one in there somewhere that says what you want it to say. If you really have a favorite workout that you want to have it support, you can probably find a paper that supports it. Okay, so we'll go over some of the dynamic warm-ups. Actually, I gave you a sheet here that I think is pretty good. Of different dynamic warm-ups. I won't display all these, but we will be doing these in the tri-camp if you come back now, and you can. But there are a whole bunch of them in here that I think are pretty useful. Again, I would pick like 4 or 5 of them that you think work different groups. I might mention a couple when we talk about some of the muscle groups here. But the idea is just to kind of get your muscles loosened up, right? And a lot of these are going to look a lot like the ones that you might do, like me, you can do this guy and just kind of walk along. But again, you're just holding it just for a couple seconds, releasing, right? So instead of standing there, pouncing up and down on one foot for 2 minutes, right? It's just really quick. You get the benefit out of the little stretch, but you're not going too long. Okay. The final thing then is what do you do when you cool down? Now, a lot of people tend to do when they cool down is then they go and do their static stretches. Well, you're stretching on pretty warm muscles. They're already, some of these probably pretty loose. So you're probably not getting the benefit out of the time you're spending doing those static stretches. I think the best thing to do, and a lot of people probably don't do this, is when you're finishing your workout, whatever it is, do the last 5 to 10 minutes really easy. All right, this means like the little ring on the bike. A lot of guys are out riding in a group and you come cranking in on your big ring right till the end. Put it in the little ring and spin for 5 or 10 minutes. That's probably going to do more for you than anything else you can do. Or running, if you did intervals, make sure you go out and run another 5, 10, 15 minutes, just really easy. Right? And swimming, You know, throw the pull buoy on and do an extra 4 or 5 laps, just nice and easy, no kicking, right? Just come up with something easy to cool down in the sport you're actually doing, right? That'll actually probably do more for you than any of the other stuff. Some people like to lay down and put their legs up. That can help drain some of the blood from your legs, or you can just jump in cold water. Okay, this probably sounds better, right? The other one I like, and this is a dynamic warm-up you do a lot, but I think most, especially biking and running, try not to take out any of the AV here, are these hip swings. If you've ever seen these, but these really feel good on your hips. And running and biking is all like this, right? And these are those abductors and adductors Mike was talking about. I'm not doing it with any weight or anything. It's just a nice, relaxed swing. Do like 10 or 15 on those on each side. And again, these are a dynamic warm-up. You can do them before, but I think these really feel good afterwards. Because usually, again, that's where you're going to start getting tight, right in your butt and your hips or anything like that. If you know you've got a spot that hurts, do some of those dynamic warm-ups at the end. Right, that'll, again, just kind of loosen those, stretch those muscles up a bit, but you're not holding them for a long time. Some people like compression socks, or now you have compression whole body suits. You can compress just about everything, so I think your eyes start bulging out. It's not compressed. But yeah, again, the idea there is to help with the blood flow, return, get some of the blood back out. And then if you're going to do static stretches, what you really want to do is do them after you've cooled down quite a bit. So actually I think the evening's a good time to do those, right? You're going to watch the news for a half hour, just sit there and do some static stretches. That's a good time if you want to do those, because then again you're not going to be using those muscles again right until the next day anyway. All right, so we're going to just run through some of the muscle groups, and Mike's already talked about some of the lifts for these. So for the shoulders again, this would be our main one for swimming, although these also can, you can use them obviously running, and then in the biking, you know, helping hold yourself up a little bit. The shoulder has a lot of, probably the most range of motion of any joint we have in our body, right? It can go, you know, kind of almost 360, right? Lots of little muscles in there to hold this, so there's a lot of different stretches you can do for this. Some, if you're flexible enough, you can reach back and touch your hands. If not, with any of these, you can use props. So you could use a towel or something, right, and just reach back. But the idea here is just to kind of work your different motions. You can just use your hands and pull things across. One of the ones I really like for swimming is just real simple. I mean, this is what you're going to be doing when you're swimming, right? Just kind of loosen your arm up and always do them both directions, right? So go backwards as well. Just kind of couple those, right? So just these would be some static stretches. You can also just do some dynamic warm-ups as well. And again, these are always good to do before a swim or before a race, anything like that. Hips, as I mentioned, are kind of the ones that get the tightest for runners and bikers. And the little bugger that really gets you is this piriformis down here. And what this muscle does is it's actually it's doing your lateral stability like this. And the problem is it's getting kind of just like swamped by your glutes, which are huge, right? Even would be your butt, right? So these muscles here are much more powerful than these piriformis. And what happens is it gets really stressed, and that's where a lot of people get this real burning hip pain. And so there are a lot of different stretches you can do for the hips, and a lot of them are really going to work on the piriformis. Anything where you can cross one leg over the other, you can even do this standing like up against a table or a desk, right? Just put your leg like that and just lean into it, and you'll feel that on your hips, right? So just any kind of stretch like that. A lot of the dynamic warm-ups are like that. The hip swings and lunges and things like that are good for your hips. Worst case, if it's really bothering you and you can't get to it, this is the secret weapon. All right, so a lot of people have played with tennis balls, you know, like you put them under your heel, or under your arch of your foot or something like that. This is actually, I got this at Menards. It's a dog toy, so it's one of those hard balls. And these things are great. You can really get places with this, all right? And so what you would do is put this on the ground and just lay on it, sit it, and you can just roll it right into wherever you're hurting. And it's basically just giving a really deep massage where you're letting your body weight do it, right? This is really good for like plantar fasciitis. You can just step on it on the ball or the arch of your foot and roll it back and forth. Right? But something like this, again, the reason I like these better, I'll pass around. These are a lot firmer, right? Tennis balls will give you a little bit of compression. These come in different sizes and colors, so you can pick whichever one you like. Okay, so when we talk about static stretching, there's just a little bit of kind of, I guess, anatomy we have to think about. So if we think about now getting into, the shoulders are pretty easy, right? We can move them all over. Your hips are actually also pretty flexible. Yeah. Bocce balls would work too. I hadn't thought of that. All right. So when we're starting to talk about the stretching the rest of your muscles, what we have to pay attention to is kind of how your anatomy is set up. And so basically our anatomy is set from the ankle. The ankles will flex like this and our hips will flex like this. So it's pretty easy for us to stretch things on the back half of our body, right? Because I can go down like this and basically I'm just really stretching whatever muscles are there. I can't go very far back this way, right? So it's really hard to stretch the muscles on the front half, right? We'll see that there are different strategies we'll have to use for both of these. The other thing to pay attention to when we think about our muscles, and Mike mentioned this as well, when the muscles work, the reason that hamstring causes your lower leg to bend when it contracts is it's actually not attached down here at the fibula, it's attached down to the bone below the joint, right? So that way when this contracts, it pulls that relative to that, right? And the same thing here, the quads, if I want to extend my knee, if I want to push my leg down, it's attached across the front, right? So the muscles are actually attached to the next bone down, right? That's why they're going to cause that bone to flex, right? If that makes sense, right? So if I want to stretch my hamstrings here, really I'm just going to lock my legs and push forward, and that's going to lengthen this muscle, right? If these guys come lined up like this and I start, it's attached up here at my hips, if I start stretching forward, that's going to really lengthen that muscle, right? It's going to stretch that muscle out. So the hamstrings are pretty easy to stretch, right? Anything I do with a toe touch or hurdler stretch, anything like that, I can get assisted stretching. Just make sure you have a safety word here, you know, so that if they start pushing too far, you can yell at them. The quads are a little bit trickier now because these are on the front. So about the best I can do is I can bend my knee and I can go like this. They're actually, guess how many muscles are in your quads? Okay, 4. Right. All right. So the 4 muscles in there. It's not a trick question. No. It turns out you're really only stretching one of the 4 muscles when you do this, right? So the other 3 really aren't getting stretched that much. And so again, the problem here is I can't really bend back at my waist like that, right? To really get the stretch I could get bending forward on my hamstrings. So this is where sometimes you'll see, and again, kind of the ball is kind of a similar idea. If you can't stretch it, you can massage it, right? You can get in there with some deep pressure massage. So they make these foam rollers too. Some of you might have used those. So this is the idea here is I can't get in there and physically stretch it very easily, so I'm going to just massage it, right? Try to loosen the muscles up that way. The IT band, here now we're talking about something a little different. So now we're not talking about a muscle, we're talking about a tendon. And with the tendons, they're actually a little bit different than the muscles. So sometimes the tendons are actually attached kind of like running along the bone. So this you could think of as the tendon being the string and the bone being the bow itself. Right, this is going to be hard to stretch, right? Because I can't really stretch the bow, right? Because it's firm, right? And so about the best I can do, you can do like these IT stretches where you go like this. Really, all you're doing is you're pushing the muscle against the tendon and trying to stretch it out a little bit, right? So you're kind of bowing it out a little. So it would be like sticking something in between the bow and the ball here and try to push it out that way. Right? So these guys, you can't really stretch these tendons like you can a muscle. Right? You can't just sit down there and touch your toes and you're stretching out a tendon like that. So what these are trying to do, you're either trying to, again, here you can do these types of stretches where you push the tendon out or rollers. I mean, those are really kind of your options there. And I think it's good to understand the physiology here because sometimes someone will say, oh yeah, here's a good stretch for this. Well, you need to know that you're probably not really stretching it as much as you think, as you're probably just pushing something against it, which you could push from the inside, which is what this is doing, or you could push from the outside, which is what this is doing. But IT band problems, people, again, these are, you can get problems in the hips. If you know where it goes from the hips to the knee, so you could feel pain in the knee, or you could feel pain in the hip, or all along the side there. All right, the knee is probably the most complex joint we think about, and this picture shows it pretty well. So here you have the femur and the tibia coming together. The knee itself would be down here, and this is where most of the major muscles in your legs all converge, right? So we've got the quads, the hamstrings, the calves, all coming together here. We got tendons all over the place, right? So this is why we have knee problems are so common, I think, in athletes, right? It's just, this is where everything comes together, right? And if any one of these goes wrong, if any one of these is bad, you've got some kind of inflammation, right? Unfortunately, as you can tell by looking at this picture, there's not a lot we can do here, right? There aren't many muscles we can really work with, right? Most of them are ending here, so the muscles are all up above it. You've got a couple tendons, and we just said, well, you can't really do a lot with tendons. So about the best you can do with your knees, I think, is have good form and be really careful on how you train. You can strengthen the muscles around it to try to give it a little protection, but there isn't really a lot of muscle right around it. I mean, you got the muscles on either side of it. If they're strong and you're not overdoing it, you're probably fine. But I think this is where, like, having a good bike fit, good running form, really paying attention to your training, are probably about the best things you can do with the knees. Sorry to be a bummer on this one, but I don't have a magic knee stretch. I don't even, anyone know a knee stretch? I mean, I know stretches. Actually, I don't even want to try it. It just sounds painful. I don't even want to know. If you have one, I don't want to hear about it. All right. So calves we can stretch. All right. So calves again are one of the muscles on the back side, so we can stretch those pretty easily. Calves get really tight in all of them, but especially running because it's where you're pushing off. So what the calf does here is when this contracts, it's pulling the ankle up, and that's putting you up in your tippy toes, right? So if I go up on my toes, it's my calf muscle that's contracting to do that. So we use this in running. This is where you're going to push off on the run, right? And we also use this a lot in swimming. You point your toes to swim. And a lot of times people might wonder why you get tight calves when you're swimming. Often it's if you're trying to swim real hard, it's from this. Right? And so the good news here is these guys we can stretch pretty easily, right? There are lots of different things. You can either lean forward and stretch. I like just going on a step, or they'll make those little planks that are 45-degree angle. You can stand on them. The thing to pay attention to, though, here is that right on the back side of the calf is the Achilles tendon, right? And so this is something we need to pay attention to, because again, this guy, when we're doing our stretching here, that tendon is kind of getting pulled, right? As this muscle pulls, it's tightening up that tendon. And this is one that if we tear this, you've got, you can have bad problems, right? Some Greek or Trojan was Achilles, I can't remember. Troy? Yeah. Yeah, he could tell you all about it, but, right. On the lower leg as well, again, kind of like with the knee, just as long as we're down here. You've probably heard of shin splints before. This is actually problems in the muscle on the front of the shin, and this is a really, really small, thin muscle. It can also be some actual bone injuries as well, if you actually get to where you have like cracks and things forming. Again, this is one, there's some stretching you can do, but this one's probably going to be more things like outside therapy and just stop doing whatever you're doing that hurt it. But this is one where there's not a magic stretch to cure shin splints necessarily. I mean, you can do things to try to minimize it. A lot of shin splints, I think, are actually from pounding on the run. If you're landing on your heel, every time you land on your heel, that's just sending that force right up your leg. And the first place it's going to hit is the shin, right, before it hits the knee. And this is where I think you get knee problems. This is, again, where that good form is going to trump anything you can do stretching afterwards. I did mention the Achilles already. Yeah, again, this is one where you can get it. Hopefully you don't get this bad all the way to a rupture, but even little tears and things can hurt. There's some stretches you can do, but again, probably a lot of this is just stay off it as much as you can and let it recover a bit. And then finally, everyone's favorite as a runner, plantar fasciitis. This again is a tendon strain. So this isn't a muscle issue. This is another tendon problem. This is one where those I think the ball rolling things are actually really good on this one, just to kind of loosen up the tendon. Again, it's not something you can stretch really easily, but if you put that big purple ball right about here and step on it and roll it around a little bit, and do that a couple times a week, especially after a run, I think that helps a lot.
Ice or heat helps plantar fasciitis?
I've usually heard of ice, but I don't know. I think that's more common, would be to ice it. I think it's a little safer probably too. I think here the key would be getting good shoes that fit, especially if you have high arches, and they make a lot of different programs now to figure out what kind of shoe you need. I even put I've got high arches, I put arch supports in all my walking shoes and stuff. I just went to Rogan's and got like 4 of the same kind and just threw them. didn't have to think about what shoe I was grabbing. And that really helped a lot. I think just that having that extra arch support. But again, that's something you'd have to kind of play with, like, not a podiatrist. All right, so hopefully between strength training and everything, you can end up looking like, okay. Sorry. Oh. All right, any questions on this? Oh, so we did give you, some sheets with dynamic warm-ups. Mick can demonstrate more of those if you want, but probably seen enough of me looking goofy. So, any questions on stretching or strength training or anything like that? Did you get one thing to try now, Jean? You always get one thing out of each session. Okay. The ball. Wait, where is my ball anyway?
You were good, right?
Yeah.
One thing that recently I had a little bit of aggravated Achilles,
Mhm.
and I did some research on it, and I had pretty good success. Is that when you're doing that, if you have an actual, mine is my right, and when you're coming down on that, before you come up, put your pressure on that, like for me, the left, and so when I'm coming up, I'm not using that weight on my right to come up with that left heel.
Are you talking about running or biking? Or when
You're doing stretching.
Stretching.
When you're doing stretching,
Okay.
like, if you're doing a stretch, so like
Okay.
what you were showing dropping down on the
Sure.
Achilles on both.
Yeah.
So
okay.
come lift that foot up, so you're just putting the weight on from either right, come down on that right, but then to come up, I want
Got
to
it.
put
Okay.
that left back
Sure.
down and put the weight coming
Yeah.
in that,
Yeah.
so that you're not
So keep the weight off it.
keep
Yeah.
the weight off it.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah,
stretch
again,
on
with-
the outside.
Tendons aren't like muscles. I mean, you're not gonna. You almost just have to wait and let them heal. You're not gonna stretch them or anything like that because they're just built differently. They're not really like there's probably some living cells in there, but they're mostly just the tendons themselves. So you have to wait for other things to go in and repair them. So I think a lot of the stuff that they talk about. That's why I know that you don't. I just wanted to kind of clear those up. That's why I put them in.
The tendons?
Yeah, they aren't really muscles, so they're not like you're not really stretching them. But I think a lot of people think you are, so that's why I have to make sure you're clear on that. Yeah, I think that's where things like the rollers or ice, or you're basically just trying to loosen up any tension that's in there, but you're not gonna stretch them technically.
Well, it's helping to repair it.
Yeah, right. Helping repair the
And
balls or ice or something
Right.
to help. Yeah. Other questions, or anybody have a favorite thing that they found too that helps for any of the things we talked about? Like, I'm not going to ask you to give a stretch. Or favorite lifting things. I bet you've been trying Mike's lifting stuff here for a couple months. I think my times are hugely faster. Okay, but actually it's kind of fun, and I do it right before I swim. If I'm doing a nice easy swim, and I'll just go down, swim for a half hour afterwards. It fits in well.
The roller on the IT band is just amazing.
Yeah.
If you can put up with the pain or
Yep.
putting it the whole way, you're almost immediately better.
Yep, yep. Yeah, with any of the bands and stuff, I really think the rolling's the way to go. I mean, there are some little stretch. I've tried those IT stretch, and I can never get it to feel like anything. Like I'm like pushing, and I can't tell what's doing. Then you get on the roller, and it's like whoa, you just feel it going down your leg. So again, if you understand what's going on with those, think of it more like a bowstring, right? You can get in there with something and rub on it, but you can't really stretch it particularly. So yeah, I think with anything like that, any of the ones we just showed up there was a tendon, I would try the massage part. If it's in your foot or something, you can probably just massage it with your hand or get your husband to do it for you or something. Sorry, Caleb. Yeah, I think those would be probably work better for you. Icing definitely helps. I know people try heat. I've always been hesitant to try that, but I don't know, some people might have had luck with that. Ice was more old school. I'm old, so. Yeah.
What's bounding? Is that like leaping forward?
I think that's yours.
Yeah, it's bounding is really like you're running, but every push off you're really pushing as high as you can.
It's almost like skipping.
Yes, a lot like skipping. Kind of like if you're going to vaulting, where that guy is really bounding upright, trying to really load his legs before he's going to do that final push off. So you're basically running kind of like the lady in the picture where you're jumping up basically every push as high as you can.
So you probably don't want to have Achilles problems when you're doing
Yes,
that.
yeah, if you have any kind of Achilles tear,
Or knee problems. Cool. Any other questions? We'll hang around too. Yes.
Some of these stretches I've been doing to take care of my sciatic nerve issue.
Uh-huh.
Some of these exact ones with the little hip one here.
Yeah, the
they
piriformis.
really have helped me.
Sure. The reason the piriformis is a little stinker is it runs right over the sciatic. So when it tightens up, sometimes it actually pinches the sciatic, and then you get these shooting pains down your legs. But it actually is coming from your hip. And so yeah, if you can loosen up your hips, there can be multiple reasons to have sciatic problems. But that's, if you're an endurance athlete, that would probably be the first one they'd look at. Yeah. So if you can loosen that up, and again, it's a lot of those stretches. And I found if the stretches aren't working, you just sit on the ball, and that hurts a lot. But
I've done it. It hurts.
It hurts, but it
gets better.
It gets better, yeah, because it's really deep massage. It's harder than you're going to get, any other way. So. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll hang around if you got more questions. Oh, and yep, don't forget. Next one. Oh yeah, tri-camps in a couple weeks, and then we'll have our last tri-seminar series just before Got Energy. We'll tell you the secrets, race strategies. Okay, all but one secret. I'm going to save one. Right on time? Yeah. You have to restart a little bit later, right?
Yeah, we started 10 minutes late.